Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Shallow End. I'm Dave Schwartz, and today I have for you a podcast audio essay. As a reminder, I typically save these for when I have issues I want to talk about that I don't necessarily feel comfortable riffing about or just talking about off the top of my head. In audio essays, I write down everything I want to say in the old style of essays we were taught and asked to write back in high school. This helps me be clear and focused, and it makes me want to go back and thank my favorite English teacher, Mr. Jenkins. Thanks for tuning into The Shallow End. As always, it really does mean a lot to me. So without further ado, let's get started. What Tommy Lasorda and Darryl Strawberry taught me about breaking. A podcast audio essay by Dave Schwartz. Iowa Dave Sports Cards on Instagram. Toward the end of spring training 1994, the Los Angeles Dodgers felt the best they had in years. Outfielder Brett Butler told the LA Times it was the team's most successful spring training during his tenure with the team. Rookie pitcher Chan-Ho Park looked every bit as good as advertised. And outfielder Darryl Strawberry, who had played just 75 games over the previous 2 seasons, mostly because of a bad back, appeared poised for a comeback. But just as spring training was about to break, Strawberry, a player who once seemed destined for the Hall of Fame, and the Dodgers' only legit power threat from the left side of the plate that year, suffered a relapse. A substance addict, Strawberry fell victim, yet again, to a disease that afflicts millions across the world. The Dodgers' legendary manager, Tommy Lasorda, was livid. He said, and I quote, "When you're weak enough to let something like that control you, it's disgraceful. How someone can be so dumb to put something in his body that will destroy him is beyond me. I get tired of hearing people describe this as a sickness. Sickness is cancer, a heart attack, not substance abuse. That's a weakness." It was a cringeworthy response then, and it's cringeworthy now. One might be willing to give Lasorda a pass. It was, after all, more than 30 years ago. We've come a long way in 30 years in understanding addiction. Lasorda was born in the 1920s, a member of the so-called greatest generation. His view on addiction formed during a very different period than today. Lasorda, however, didn't stop there. In May of 1994, the Dodgers outright released Strawberry. Shortly after the release, Lasorda appeared on a local sports show to talk all things Dodgers. A caller referred to Strawberry as a dog, to which the quick-witted Lasorda shot back, "You're wrong. Strawberry is not a dog. A dog is loyal and runs hard after balls." Strawberry signed with the Giants for the balance of 1994. Then, in June of 95, he signed with the Yankees, where he'd play the final 5 seasons of his career. His power never really returned, although he had a slight resurgence in 1998. And he won World Series rings with the Yanks in 96, 98, and 99. Strawberry finished his career after the 99 season with 335 homers, exactly 1,000 RBIs, and 4 World Series wins, most notably with the awesome 86 Mets. He won Rookie of the Year, earned 8 All-Star Game appearances, 2 Silver Sluggers, appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated at least a half dozen times, and since this is a sports card podcast, it's worth noting that his 1983 Topps Traded card number 108T remains one of the coolest baseball cards of the 1980s. In the early 2000s, retired from baseball, Strawberry continued to suffer from addiction. He was in and out of rehab and even served a prison sentence. He's still alive. For years now, he's been an ordained minister who frequently speaks about addiction. While he's no angel, he is most certainly not a dog. 2 weeks ago on The Shallow End, I got to speak with Alex Efron, founder of Collectors MD, a support group for people who collect sports cards and display addictive behavior. Now, what does addictive behavior mean in the context of sports cards? A few things. It could mean overspending. It could be an inability to detach from the hobby, which is a feeling I can definitely identify with. It could mean hiding certain behaviors, and certainly it could mean a compulsion to take part in breaks. Breaking is 1 part raffle, 1 part slot machine, 1 part video poker, 1 part roulette. A screen-based game of chance in which we trick ourselves into believing we have some level of control over whether we win or lose. Take all the pretense away, and breaking is the act of giving money to people through your phone or computer screen who will then open sports cards for you. In a raffle, you give people money in exchange for a ticket. And when they pull a number out of a hat later, you hope that number matches the one on your ticket. When you put money into a slot machine, you're hoping the dials turn in your favor and line up 3 oranges or 3 sevens or 3 treasure chests in a row to turn your $1 into $100. When you put money into a video poker machine, you're hoping that the machine has been programmed fairly, and you're hoping it gives you good cards, and you hope you have the skills to make the right choices with those cards to turn your $20 into $1,000. The roulette corollary, I think, is self-explanatory. In breaking, you give money to someone to open sports cards for you, and before they start opening, you declare or request or make a bid for which team or player belongs to you. A break could be just a few bucks to enter, or it could be thousands. Either way, this is your chance to strike it rich. You'll likely get skunked. That's the term for not getting anything good in the box or the pack of cards. It's like pulling the slot machine handle and not getting a winning pull. But don't worry, you can try again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until maybe you finally hit that big card, which at some point you'll sell for decent money, which you then put back into breaks. For some, it's addictive, which means you have the urge to do something and can't stop even when you want to, even if it's not in your best interests. By nearly any definition of behaviors or activities that can lead to addiction, breaking should be included. The Center for Addiction and Mental Health describes addiction as a craving, a loss of control, a compulsion to continue taking part despite the consequences. Health Direct, an Australian organization, describes addiction this way, and I quote, "Addiction is when you have a strong physical or mental need or urge to do something. It is a dependence on a substance or activity, even if it harms you. Signs include strong cravings, struggle to control the behavior, and spending a lot of time on the activity." What is not addictive to some can be addictive to others. All of our brains and bodies are different, whether it comes to food, alcohol, sex, drugs, shopping, or gambling. Some will hear this audio essay and will nod in understanding. Others will act like Tommy Lasorda and say something like, "Hey, I'm not going to tell grown people what to do with their money. If you enter too many breaks, that means you're weak." This is an audio essay about semantics, about words and their meaning, and why it's crucial we use the right ones. This is not an essay about eliminating the vices around us that can complicate life, but that also, let's be honest, can make life more enjoyable. I love eating too much fried food while I watch sports. I love enjoying a beer with my family each summer at the auto races. I love buying a new baseball cap, even though I've already got 5 in my closet. And yes, from time to time, I love playing a few hands of blackjack in Vegas with my wife. What I don't enjoy is lying. What I don't enjoy is watching others lie to the vulnerable for their own financial benefit. There are so many breakers out there that it would be unfair of me to single out 2 or 3, which is why I'm speaking and writing only about breaking platforms, which for the rest of this essay will be referred to as breaking casinos. Why? because this is an audio essay about semantics, about choosing the right words, assigning the right word to the right situation. As this happens over time, as we begin to adopt new words for new situations, they become accepted within those communities. Let's consider some examples. In the early 1990s, a nationally known auto repair company got in trouble for performing maintenance that didn't need to be done. It was a way of bilking customers for money, even though they might have just come in to have their tires rotated. You might think this is a company that got stopped after those practices were busted, but they did not. They just rebranded, and that rebrand was so successful that this practice is now common throughout the auto repair business. Except now, instead of being called a scam, it's called something else. It's called preventative maintenance. Here's another example. In 1916, Congress passed the estate tax. Although he was no longer president, social progressives like Teddy Roosevelt supported the estate tax because it supported equality of opportunity, making it harder to pass fortunes down through families over generations. There was a very small but vocal opposition to the estate tax until the last couple of decades, when a political consultant suggested going mainstream with the tax's nickname, the death tax. Since then, opposition to the estate tax has gained enormous amount of tractions. Words matter. And here's one last example, and then we'll take it back to sports cards. About a decade ago, a late-night talk show host took to the streets to ask people which federal healthcare legislation they preferred, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. The joke, of course, is that they were pretty much the same thing, but the people they interviewed didn't know that. Obamacare was the vernacular description for the Affordable Care Act. The clever, if mean-spirited, bit effectively demonstrated the political divide within an issue nearly everyone could get behind, as long as it was named the right way. Words matter. Which brings us back to breaking casinos like Whatnot and Fanatics Live, among others. It's important they be called breaking casinos because that's what they are, casinos. Years ago, in another life, a former boss answered a question in such a way that has always stuck with me. I think about this moment often. One of our younger employees emailed her asking about how she prefers we spell a certain word. Don't worry about the word, that's not important, but the question was, do we spell the word this way or that way? To which my boss hit reply all and wrote back, we spell it that way because that's how it's spelled. Whatnot and Fanatics Live should be called casinos because that's what they are. Casinos. A casino is a place where you enter for the purpose of gambling. You entrust others in the company will make sure everything is on the up and up. You wager your money in games of chance. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you win big. Most of the time, you lose. As far as I can tell, there are only two differences between Fanatics Live and Whatnot, and Caesar's Palace Casino in Las Vegas. And those differences are that Caesar's Palace has restaurants and a hotel room, while Fanatics Live and Whatnot let you enter their casinos from the comfort of your own home, or, God forbid, while you're sitting at work. Actually, here's one other difference. The biggest difference, which Alex Efron points out, is that Caesar's Palace and the Bellagio, the Venetian, and others, as well as online gambling casinos like FanDuel and DraftKings, the biggest difference is they acknowledge their business is addictive and make resources available to people who need help. Companies that make and sell alcohol acknowledge their products' addictive properties, albeit through government regulation. Even websites with adult content acknowledge the need for disclosures and responsibility up to a point. But for reasons both known and assumed, the hobby's merchants of gambling, the breakers, the hobby's apex seedy predators, position themselves as a fun activity that does so much good for the hobby. Later on in this essay, we'll go through some of these alleged good deeds provided by breaking casinos. But first, I'm going to pause here to give some background on myself, because it's important for this discussion that you know where I'm coming from. I have never taken part in a break. I have neither a Fanatics Live nor a Whatnot account. And I've never even seen a break on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, or any other platform. But every week for a couple of years now, I spend 10 minutes a week on YouTube watching the top 10 polls of the week hosted by If Sports. I also learned about breaking by listening for years to a podcast hosted by Mojo Break. My lack of experience might give someone pause about my credentials to speak on this topic, and it would be understandable if they responded, "If you've never taken part in a break, how do you know they're dangerous?" To which I say this: I am not a trained chef, but I know not to piss on a pizza. Humans can be smart and observant and draw logical conclusions. What I am, however, is the son of a compulsive gambler. My mom, who died 20 years ago, gambled compulsively. We didn't know how bad until after she died, leaving my dad with a trail of hidden debt. He's okay now, but it affected his spending habits and possibly his ability to retire for years. Not all casinos are in Vegas or Atlantic City, Macau, or Monte Carlo. My mom's favorite was a 15-minute drive from our home in St. Louis. It was like any other casino, with hotel rooms, restaurants, a spa, and, of course, games of chance. When I was a kid, she liked to play blackjack once a year in Vegas with her sister. After her sister died, and the casino in St. Louis opened, she moved to slots and video poker, a quarter or $1 at a time. I remember coming home from college and meeting her there, where she, Dad, and I would sometimes have dinner. To say it was the most depressing place on earth would be inaccurate. It was startling and sad. Mostly the people. I remember them pulling handles and levers, pressing buttons to play another hand like it was instinct. Their faces held no emotion, no hope, no anger, no happiness, only fatigue and what I interpreted as resignation. One hand after the next, after the next, after the next. I saw nuns gambling. I saw rabbis gambling. I saw the elderly and the youthful. And the one common denominator was the mechanical inertia and lack of presence. Just one hand after the next, after the next, after the next, and once in a great while, a moment of extreme jubilation when someone hit a jackpot or a progressive. And then back to the inertia of playing another hand. For those who couldn't walk away, people like my mother and so many others, Tommy Lasorda would call them weak. He would have said they were making a choice. It's not, though, because for some it's an illness. It's those people we, collectively, have a responsibility to look out for. That doesn't mean a return to prohibition for alcohol or that we close breaking casinos like Fanatics and Whatnot. It means we start by doing the little things, the important things, like choosing our words carefully. It means we use our words to tie breaking to gambling, to create a bond between the two so thick they become as connected as cigarettes and lung cancer. It means we highlight, when appropriate, the wonderful resources people in our hobby have already created to help educate and spread self-awareness, to help people help themselves. That could mean trying to turn Alex Efron's self-help organization, Collectors MD, into a name as well known in the hobby as Whatnot. It could mean highlighting the work of Chris McRae, known on Instagram as Cardi C Sports, for his initiative, The Smarter Collector, which he uses to educate people to help them have a better hobby experience. Let's be honest. One can successfully argue that all the social and government warnings in the world didn't stop Darryl Strawberry from becoming an addict. And that's true. But the warnings did help some people. And just as good, those warnings make companies that manufacture and sell vice substances legally accountable. That's a very good thing. Vice institutions. Gambling, marijuana, alcohol can actually serve as positive forces in our society. But for some people, they can be living nightmares. That's why we must never stop speaking the words breaking and gambling in the same sentence. That's why we must put sports cards and addictive behavior in the same box. I'm not convinced we should actually want to grow the hobby. That's become a cliche. But we should at least want to make the hobby fun. This, accurate descriptions and conversations, is how we start doing that. What we don't do is lie, is be disingenuous. I mentioned earlier that we'd revisit some of the false narratives people who work for breaking companies use to make excuses for their gambling industry. Let's do that now so we can see how dumb they look. Dumb narrative number 1. Hey, every time you go to Target or Walmart to buy a pack of cards to open, you're hoping for good cards. Isn't that gambling? Should Walmart and Target stop selling cards? Okay, first of all, that's just stupid, misleading, and disingenuous. If someone is that desperate to create false equivalencies for gambling, they're not worth listening to. That person might as well say, hey, there's always a chance the lettuce at your grocery store has salmonella. You bought it anyway. Isn't that gambling? Online breaking casinos reduce friction to addiction because they are at your fingertips, on our phones, connected to our debit and credit cards. It was tempting enough for people like my mother who, once the local casino opened, could drive 15 minutes to gamble instead of having to go to Vegas. Online breaking casinos can be accessed before we even get out of bed in the morning. We can access breaking casinos while we sit on the toilet. No, buying a pack or a box of cards from Walmart is not on the same level as breaking casinos. If you're publicly trying to make that connection or analogy, shame on you. Dumb narrative number 2. Hey, breaking is your chance to get great cards for your collection before they hit the open market. You might buy to a break for $50 and come away with a 4-figure card that, if you had not entered the break, would never have entered your collection. If you're listening to this episode of The Shallow End, I'm going to assume you collect cards. So let me ask you this question. Think about the best 1 or 2 cards in your entire collection. How did you acquire them? Did you win them in a break? If not, how did you get them? Oh my goodness, was it magic? Or was it, and hear me out, one of these 2 other means of picking up cards? You either bought it or you traded for it. So which is more likely? You built your PC through a series of improbably incredible online breaking hits, or the other option, you have a job and you used your money to buy your cards. This is why CardEC's The Smarter Collector is so valuable, because it can facilitate discussions about why buying singles is a good way to target the cards you really want. Education is the most important thing, but looking out for each other also matters. Dumb narrative number 3. Some people are team collectors. PYT breaks help you get cards for your PC that you otherwise could never pick up. Really? Have you never been on eBay? Are you unaware of the 9 trillion sports cards being sold on there right now? Trust me, team collectors don't need PYT breaks. Finally, dumb narrative number 4. And this might be the meanest, most disingenuous, biggest lie of them all. But breakers provide liquidity. They open so much product that without them, a lot of cards we care about would never come to market. That is simply not true. That's a lie. It's completely and utterly false. Online breaking became a thing in the early to mid 2000s, which means the sets and cards that so many of us treasure today, cards that were produced between the 1880s and 2000, all managed to come to market just fine. They didn't need breaking casinos. We still don't need them. Here, off the top of my head, is a list of card brands or sets that came to market without breaking casinos, in no particular order. Old Judge, Allen and Ginter, Bowman, Topps, Gowdy and Playball, U.S. Carmel, every card made by tobacco or confectionery company, Fleer, Donruss, Upper Deck, Score and Pinnacle, PMGs, Essential Credentials, Exquisite, Finest, Chromium Cards, Refractors, Die Cuts, Showcase Legacies, Fleer Brilliance, O-Pee-Chee, Venezuelan Cards, Select Mir, Red, Blue, and Gold, Wilson's Franks, Red Heart Dog Food, Kellogg's, Purina, Post Cereal, Bazooka, Hostess, Stadium Club, and Hires Root Beer. And then again, those are just the ones I wrote down off the top of my head. None of them needed breakers to bring them to market. They needed marketing, sure, but they sure as hell didn't need breaking casinos. Breakers have changed the hobby in just two distinguishable ways. They have made it more entertaining for those who are in it for the fun and don't suffer from addiction. And they have inspired companies like Topps, Panini, and others to increase SKUs, print runs, and products to accommodate the needs and success of the online breaking casinos. Breakers aren't good at getting cards to market. They're good at getting companies to print an artificial amount of cards, which then flood the entire market. The purpose of this essay isn't to convince anyone that breaking is gambling. We know it is. And if I'm being honest, the purpose of this essay isn't to aid people who might need help with their addiction. The purpose of this essay is to remind those of us who are not addicted of what breaking is. Breaking is a casino. It has no other purpose, no other definition. Breaking is a casino. If someone is going to argue it's not a casino, it's because that person is either a contrarian by nature, or naive, or delusional, or lying, or disingenuous, perhaps because their careers and incomes or side hustles likely depend on the existence of breaking. It's time to stop dancing around this issue. Whatnot is a casino. Fanatics Live is a casino. When breaks happen on YouTube and Facebook, then YouTube and Facebook are in those moments transformed into casinos. They are not breaking platforms. They are casinos, places people go either physically or virtually to enter into games of chance for the purpose of financial reward. I personally have kept my butt parked on the fence of this issue for too long, and I'm embarrassed it took me this long to speak up. I sat there quiet on the sidelines, hoping no one would notice me. I'm just here for the cards. Yay, collecting. Don't rock the boat, blah, 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 blah. But the good news for me and for all of us is that it's never too late to change the conversation. I love collecting cards. I don't love seeing people in the hobby, either on IG or at card shows, who so clearly are stuck or are lost, who need help, and not doing what we can to help them. Breaking casinos aren't the only form of addictive behavior in the hobby. Far from it. But we have to start somewhere. So let's start with breaking. Breaking is gambling. All the time. Every time, without exception. It's time we brought the truth out into the light. It's time we speak about it confidently, vocally, assuredly. If we care about the hobby and the people in it, this is how we show it. Thanks for listening to The Shallow End. I'll talk with you again next time, whenever that may be.